You are listening to the Will Power Podcast. Welcome to the show. I am Will Holdren, and I talk with some of the most influential CEOs, entrepreneurial leaders, and thought leaders to reveal the secrets that have led to their success. I believe that with the right knowledge and mindset, you can do anything you say your mind to. So if you want to learn how to change your life for the better, if you want to learn how millionaires actually became wealthy, or if you want to develop and start your own business from the ground up with the right knowledge to help you, then you are in the right place because this is the Willpower Podcast. How's it going, everyone? My name is Will Holdren. I'm the host of your Willpower Podcast. Today, we have an incredible entrepreneur who is based out of the Atlanta marketplace, and his name is Larry Campbell. And back in 2016, Larry was actually CEO of a company called the CD Group, and they were actually a software consulting firm that has served over 500 clients over 21 states. Massive company, had an amazing liquidation event. After that, he sold his business in 2016 and actually dedicated himself fully to Cornerstone Outreach, which is his nonprofit that he started back in 2010. He's doing a lot of great things with that. And at Cornerstone Outreach, they help equip Atlanta's underserved students of color and their families to help lead full lives through educational development, which is really cool to see. They're currently working with over 700 students, and they also have put over 600 people into the workforce, which is absolutely incredible. And like I mentioned, not only do they help educate people, but they also help create jobs as well. So it's really a full circle outreach that they're doing. So with that being said, Larry, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm excited to share, and I appreciate just to get talk a little bit about Corners and talk about how we together can lift our community, because while we have many who flourish, we have many that are stuck in poverty.
Absolutely. And your story is absolutely incredible. And I love that we can shine some light on what you guys are currently doing and the impact that you guys are making out here in Atlanta and honestly just in the world all around. So starting out, I want to ask you a question I ask all of my podcast guests, which is one, what makes you want to jump on podcasts like these to go out there and really just share your story and share what you're doing?
You know, I would say I believe it's a team game, and I think part of what we see sometimes is I think entrepreneurship, which I love entrepreneurship. I'm curious. I think there are phenomenal ways to make businesses, and I love the aspect of the game. It's exciting to me, but I think over time we've made it be a little bit too individual. And so part of what we've been able to do is in my career, I've always been more of a team builder because I feel like when you team well, everyone benefits from it. And, like, Churchill would say, it's an inspiration to lead people well. And so when I look at that in high performing teams like my technology company or in people today that really are wonderful, beautiful people, but don't have the resources, in all cases, I get to see how the entrepreneurial curiosity of leadership can help all of us lift our community.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, entrepreneurs are really the ones that helps the world go round and they're really the ones driving things to happen. So it's really special to see entrepreneurs blending that with, really positive, outreaches and businesses that they're growing. Like you said, that really helps the community at the end of the day. So before we jump into Corners Outreach, I want to jump a little bit back into your story. So obviously you were the CEO of a company called CD Group, which is a pretty massive software consulting firm. So kind of walk me through, I guess, did you always have the entrepreneurship bug growing up? How did you end up with CD Group? And we'll start out there.
Yeah, I think it's a really kind of crazy thing because I actually have almost 3 different lives, if I could use that expression. I graduated college with an accounting degree and I went to work for the seventh largest company in the world. And I worked through that company all the way to corporate America. So you might say I had the best of both worlds because I learned at the feet of many large corporations, did strategic planning, acquisitions, financial modeling, help increase capacity, help decrease capacity, learned the technical aspects of doing that from a human point of view and from a balance sheet ROI point of view. I left there and started a consulting company that basically was the beginning of something very small. So I went from the large company to the small company, but I used the leverages. I leveraged the experience from the large company to go help clients, and we continue to grow through. We were, like you said, in 20 different states. The bottom line gets into is that when you make people's business better, they smile when they see you. They welcome you in. And so that was a common characteristic we had in that process. I like problem solving. I like the newness of being consulting, so it made a lot of sense to chase that. I also found that in many cases, an outside person has a different perspective. So being the outside person gave me a perspective. And if you present that well and you create teaming inside, then you can walk away. Our objective was never to stay there. It was always to go solve a problem and then walk away from it, which energizes everybody in that process.
Yeah. And that's incredible. And obviously, I think it's really easy to kind of brush over how successful that company truly was. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's not easy growing your own company, becoming CEO and expanding over 20 states, having over 500 clients. I mean, that is super impressive. And so, from your viewpoint, I mean, were there hardships along the way, or was it kind of all smooth sailing for you, or ups and downs? And what did that process look like for you?
Well, and no, it was never smooth sailing. I mean, I think we all learned from that view. I mean, if you think about 2008, the market was very, very difficult, and a lot of people had set down their money, and consulting was hard. If you also think about 9/11, coming out of 9/11, very few people wanted to travel.
Mm,
It's crazy today because with the pandemic, we accept Zoom and video, but in those years, no one wanted to do that. So we all boarded airplanes. And yet, coming out of 9/11, no one really wanted to board an airplane. So part of it gets into is that whole ability to adapt, to figure out how to add value, because that's what clients pay you for. They pay you to add value, also to create a relationship so that if you weren't there every day, there was a trusting relationship. You knew what you were doing, which is why I love outcomes. When you do outcomes based, work, then you know that I can prove the balance sheet's better. So it's not my opinion versus yours, which is why I like scoreboarding and analytics. And that was something we became very, very well known as, is using analytics to really create the best information to inform the best decision makers. So I wouldn't say it was easy. I can honestly say remote management's also hard. A lot of my friends will say, I've done a great job here in Atlanta. I'm going to open an office in Denver. And I would say opening an office in Denver is way harder than you think because you won't see those people every day. And so when we think about having employees in 20 states, we were trying to create a culture so those people felt part of something, and yet they weren't part of something every day. They had to see what the value was in doing that. So that was stretches my leadership ability. But again, it's a great problem to solve because it creates continuity. Our company was very, very good because our turnover was less than 10%. And in
wow.
technology field, turnover is in the 30 to 50%. So we managed a way to create a culture that caused people to want to be there by focusing both on them and on the problem together. And it created a really exciting time to go to work because there are just many bright people to work
Yeah, and company culture, like you mentioned, is so vital to the company's success down the road. Because as CEO, you only have so much time. You can only do so much yourself. So you got to make sure that culture is also, well above standards. So people want to stay there. People want to, see the company excel as well. I think a lot of business owners, especially entrepreneurs, they really struggle developing that company culture you were talking about. I know you mentioned you really focused on the employees. So really, if you want to dive into a little bit more detail, what does that really entail? I know you don't like events for them, or how do you really drive up company culture?
well. Part of it is you have to establish your vision and mission and live by it. What they say is the values are things you don't declare, but the way you live your life. And
Mm,
so inside a culture, there has to be the values that you talk about are lived out. One of the things that we did very, very well, and I instituted this policy where I would meet with you around your anniversary date, and I would make you the president of the company. And your job was to create what are the first three things you would do. And so every employee knew wherever they were, I would come meet with them, Minneapolis, Denver, wherever, Montana. And
oh,
they
wow.
knew that I was going to give them the crown, so to speak, to be the president for those three objectives. And what I would say to them is I might say, hey, Will, when you give me your three, I might say, hey, Will, how do you feel about that one? And do you want everyone to know it came from you? And sometimes people would say, absolutely. And sometimes they go, no, I don't want it to be coming from me. So what we would do is we would put those together, and when they're successful, we'd come back and say, that was Will's idea. If they're unsuccessful, they would say, man, Larry messed up again, and we would make fun of it. It created that ownership. Because
Yeah.
what I said in consulting was, I want you on Saturday morning, if you're playing golf and people say, what do you do? I want you to say, I own a company. That ownership is such a critical part that created that stickiness factor that Gladwell talks about. That I think is very important. And we attracted people that love problem solving. So it's a great environment to work
Yeah, that's really cool. And obviously it's worked out in a massive way, obviously, with that company. It's with how successful you guys have been. So I know that you guys have sold, or you sold your company in 2016, but you started Corners Outreach back in 2010. So that means you had a couple years there, a lot of overlap, which to me seems like a lot to put on your plate at one time, especially when you're running a full-time company and starting up a non-for-profit at the same exact time. So walk me through what was time management like during that period? And also,
in.
why did you decide to start up Corners Outreach in that year, 2010?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I do tell people that I think we've overused the word boundary. I think we're sometimes thinking about everything fits in a pattern, but I don't think life does.
Hmm.
And so really what it gets into is that our community needs us to reach out and do things that sometimes stretch us. It would have been easier to just run the company, but I feel like I grew up in a time period that we talked about if you had the opportunity and you had the resources, then you had the responsibility. So my wife and I had lots of discussions about after our kids went to college and we had more time. And we're faith led. I believe very much in the Bible. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I believe in the three G's: the greatest commandment, the Great Commission, and the Good Samaritan. So I feel
Uh,
like in those ways to live those out is that we basically take what we do and what we believe, and we love others well. I mean, love your neighbor as yourself is part of the greatest commandment. So
yeah,
part of it was a balance. Every day wasn't pretty. Every day is like, wow, what are we thinking? But
yeah,
I also say that the Lord gave me the ability, and I think that's part of my prayer was eventually it got to be too big for both. And along the way, he brought a buyer to buy the CD company so that I could go concentrate on Corners Outreach. So it really was a heart driven focus of how do we help others. Again, it's still teamwork, but how we lift others out of poverty.
yeah. That's amazing. I love, just following and God's plan. God has a plan for everyone. You guys just have faith in his plan and really just take that leap of faith, obviously, like what you did, while working full time as a CEO, which is really cool to see. And obviously Corners Outreach has been such a massive success the past decade or so. But walk me through. So why did you decide to go into the educational space of things? I know for Corners Outreach, you guys obviously help kids a lot out with homework and obviously help them educational development going forward. Why is that the space you ended up going into with your nonprofit?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit about my life story. I grew up on a small farm. We did not talk about poverty because we had food. We grew in the garden. We had the ability to eat regularly. We had a house, but my mom and dad never graduated high school, and
Hmm.
so they basically saw education as the way to get out of that. And so to them, education was a way to lift ourselves up. And so for me, I can truly say by going to college and graduating and getting to work at the seventh largest company, education opened those doors for me. So what I began to see in the early 2000s was I saw a lot of kids dropping out of school. And I could not figure out when we have such a freedom of education here, why would a teenager drop out? I'm kind of one of those people that have this curiosity. So I went to one of the basketball coaches at our local high school because I love sports.
Yeah.
And I said, I just have this crazy idea. I'd like to interview the teenagers that are dropping out just to ask them why. And it was I knew the people well. They knew that I wasn't crazy, so they let me do that. And surprisingly, the teenagers took my phone calls. And what I found was is that many of them got overwhelmed with school. They got so far behind they couldn't do the schoolwork, or because they lived in poverty, they were trying to do schoolwork and work part time. And
Mm.
so what we felt like is that one way we could change the future, and I think we build the future every day. I think the future is not something in the future; it's present today that causes the future of tomorrow. And
Yeah.
so we felt like the best thing we could do, and studies show that third grade reading level is a predictor of prison size and a predictor of graduation. So we just
Wow.
basically went to the elementary school and said, hey, we're here to work. How do we make that work? And so we did what we do at home. We gave out snacks and then did homework together. And over time, we began to recognize that the school system does so many things wonderful, but when you have a group of 28 kids, they're all at different learning levels. By getting them in smaller groups, then we can build their confidence to be learners. And basically, confidence is a critical thing to learning. So it created a pathway that lets them break out of poverty through education.
That is so truly amazing. And to your point, I think like you mentioned, a lot of these low income, families, obviously the kids have to work, right? For stuff to work out for the family at the end of the day, which makes it extremely hard for them to balance school, come home and do homework and go out and work at the same time and be successful at both of those. So that is really cool to see how you kind of infiltrated that arena. So talk me through like when you first started doing this, did you personally go out to these elementary schools and start prepping them what you wanted to do and how did those first conversations go and talk me through how you kind of got the ball off the ground.
Yeah, I absolutely did go there personally and met with the principal, and I used the same question I did in consulting. I would say to the principal of the school is, tell me what are your three biggest headaches? Tell me the three things that keep you up at night that you feel you're worried about. and let me do that. And it's funny because the principal would say, "Tell me what you want to do." And I think, "No, no, 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 no. I want to be the servant. I believe in servant leadership. So I'm here to serve. I'm not here to tell you." And she would laugh and say, "Yeah, really." And then she gave me a trailer park. And because her biggest headache was that she felt like the kids in a trailer park were pulling down the overall scholastic scores for the entire school. And so she wanted to figure that piece out. And so all of a sudden, I went from being the white guy in the room to being the white guy at the trailer park with primary people that weren't looking like me. And I used a very common view. I know that in many of the Latino cultures and African American cultures, the mom is the backbone. And it's not a negative to any dads. It's just the mom is the person that's always makes that work. So I created a moms committee and I gave them power. And I said that I worked for them, same servant leadership I told the principal. And slowly but surely, as they began to believe that, they began to trust me. And I got deeper into poverty and understanding their life. I learned a great deal about immigration. And so I learned also about the stability of the home life. Education is the best answer, as Nelson Mandela would say, it's the best way to change the world. But when you don't have stability at home, you really aren't going to change the world. So in about 5 years into the program, we began to truly do two generations. We begin to focus on the student for the future. But today, how do we get the parent to have better jobs, which led us to Corners Industries, which is kind of that whole concept of put them to work and then create a better home life. And in that particular view, we can also create a self-funding nonprofit.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you didn't just stop at Corners Outreach, you went a whole nother step further to create Corners Industries. And so you're out there creating companies. I think I saw the biggest one is the lawn care company, correct? Where you guys have where people
Yeah.
join that and go out there and start taking care of lawns, which is absolutely incredible. So, kind of walk me through, I mean, how did you get these businesses off the ground? And also how are you getting these families to come and work? Are you just going to their trailers where you were and say, "Hey, I have this opportunity, come check this out," or kind of walk me through what that looks like?
Yeah, and well, I'm a little bit of that showman and a little bit of that corny showman sometimes too. So we use asset-based community development, meaning that you build on their asset, and so that means we're constantly surveying to see what's your skills. In 2017, we surveyed all of our dads, and the number one skill of them was lawn care.
Hmm.
And so then I went back to the board and said, I have an asset in lawn care. Let's start a lawn care business. And when the board quit laughing, I was like, that wasn't a joke. I really want to do that. And
Yeah.
their point was, what do you know about this? And I said, I've been running service-based organizations all the time. I know KPIs. I know how to create all the model. They know lawn care. So we just started, and what we did is, and this is again, I would go to, so often in our workshop, we would have a lot of moms attend and not a lot of dads because dads working three jobs. They're working day job, night job, weekend job. So I was having a hard time getting much dad attention. So I went to the workshops and it said, I have job opportunities and I'll give anyone who starts a 20% increase. Whatever you're making, I'll give you 20% more. And people are always like, what were you thinking? I said, I needed to attract them. And I know how poorly they were being paid. And so I was very confident I could pay them more. And because we're a nonprofit, our whole focus is lifting their wages, not creating profit. And so in that particular view, I just took 20% of the profit and gave it to the wage earners, which created a better life for them. And that created a great attraction model. And we're happy to say the last 2 years, we paid out over $1 million in wages to our families in the lawn care business. And so we would love to have anyone on here who's looking for someone to do your yard. We do residential, we do commercial, banks, apartment complexes, townhouses. We do everything. And our Latinos run that business and they take care of it. And I'm just here to help say they're phenomenally gifted at it. They do a phenomenally great job. They get high scores, and yet it gives them a better earning. And then we give 10%. So if you paid me $100 to do your yard, I give 10% of it back to tutoring, creating a self-funding nonprofit. So last year we did 1.7 million in lawn care. So $170,000 came across to fund additional teachers to grow the education.
Wow, that is truly, truly remarkable. And that was honestly going to be my next question. I mean, who's going out there like getting more lawn clients? How does that business run itself? And honestly, how many lawns do you guys currently have under contract with that company?
Yeah, we have 400 lawn clients we're working with.
Wow.
So we have a large, and I can honestly say this goes back to is I do a lot of speaking at chambers and rotaries and churches, and you're giving me the opportunity to speak today. A lot of people really like the concept of a business person to invest. So often in the nonprofit world, we tend to think of things in relief. So I'm going to give you money and you're going to go use that money to give people food or to pay for their rent. But it's a one-time temporary thing. It relieves the burden, but doesn't change. We really are big on development. So this is an example I would say when I go speak at a church is people say, well, we can give you money. We'll give you $50,000. And I said, well, if you give me $70,000, I'll go buy a truck, all the equipment, and I'll equip a lawn care team. That team will bring in $200,000 of revenue each year, and I'll give 20,000 back to tutoring. So in 3 years, I'll create my own business, and then I'll run 7 years thereafter, and we're lifting the wages of it. So a lot of business people would say, man, I'd rather make an investment with you than give you relief money. So,
Right.
and at the same time period, as I say, if you want me to be successful, let me do your yard. Now, I'll tell this story just because it's important. We bid on an apartment complex that wasn't close to us, and we went and bid on it, and we won. And I went back to the owner and I said, did we win because of our story? And he goes, no, you won because your lawn care guys are really good. And they renewed that contract, twice, 3-year contracts twice in that time period because we score in the 90s. So our guys are really good at what they do. They really care about what they're doing. They have great work ethic. They do a really good job. And now what's happening, of course, is it's lifting their wages. We've now moved their wages up to they make $24 an hour. Lawn care, that's very, very high end. And we're creating a funding mechanism for tutoring. So I would say for any of our viewers here that would be interested in the lawn care business, it's the entrepreneurial cycle. We have all the KPIs. So we do route management, we do profit analysis, we do everything in that particular view. So we're running it as a business, but in that business, our objective is to raise wages and to fund tutoring.
That's amazing. And just out of curiosity, what is the average wage that these people are having before they come over and, join the lawn care company?
Yeah, before they come over, they're making in the, $600 a week, and we're able to lift them up to, almost $1,000 a week.
Wow.
And
And
so
that
it's
is,
a tremendous change in that particular view for them.
yeah, that's really life-changing stuff for them. No doubt. No doubt. And that's amazing too. Like you're talking about, I think one of the really cool aspects of what you're doing is that you're a self-sustaining nonprofit, right? Where you guys are creating income that can help, funnel and really serve your whole company. Where a lot of other nonprofits, like you're saying, you're taking investments in, you're taking dollars in, but then it's just kind of like a sunk cost, and then you've got to keep
Yeah.
it. But with you guys, that investment grows. And like you mentioned, I think a lot of, business owners that are looking for charitable ways to give, once they see that this is a really self-sustaining investment, I think it's a really positive thing for them to hear and see.
Yeah, we took that same concept. So we took that concept during the pandemic, we sewed masks to help our moms make money during that time period. And then I got with business leaders coming out of the pandemic and said, what do you think about starting a painting company or a light manufacturing? And they said, no, Larry, start a staffing company. You have access to audience, you have trust, you have relationships. Help us get that going. So we started a staffing company. Same concept. We give back 10% of the staffing revenue back to that. We've now placed over 100 workers in jobs. As you said, the 600 that we're training in that process. So now we're giving people better development. They can create a better life for themselves and their family, and education that can stick because they're not changing jobs. In that process, we're lifting the whole community through what we're trying to do. So if anyone needs workers that we can help out with, we truly are a placement company. We basically generated and influenced 4.5 million in revenue last year on our social enterprise side. And all those things says that it's really a thing is if we want to beat poverty, let's use relief as a way to solve today's problem. Let's use development as a way to solve tomorrow's problem. And if we do that together by hiring workers that are in poverty, pretty soon the community benefits from that.
Right. It makes the whole world a better place at the end of the day. So that is
Yeah.
extremely beautiful to see. Before we jumped on this, we're obviously talking about, being purposeful and being versus intentional. I think a lot of people out there, they know they want to do something that can really help the community, help out the world, and I think a lot of them are like, well, maybe I have to start my own nonprofit, when in reality, it doesn't have to be that complex. There's places where you can go help and do other things and really make an impact simply by jumping in and joining someone like you and what you guys are currently doing with Cornerstone Outreach. So with that being said, how can people find you guys, go out there, help you guys, volunteer, donate? What does that look like if people want to, help contribute to your guys' mission and cause?
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. If you go to our website, cornersoutreach.org, there is a volunteer page. So you can volunteer. We have people that come play kickball. We have people that come do reading practices with our kids, give out snacks. We have kids that come do their homework. there's very, very important aspect. We have business people that come practice interviews. So we're creating resumes for the, remember, we're working on asset base. So the asset of the person we're bringing forward, but sometimes those people have not been comfortable in office environments, or they've not done interviews, or maybe language, their first language is not English. And so in that particular view, they're a little bit nervous. So business people come in and they do practice interviews. And we really love that because it gives a chance to see the beauty in everybody because you get to know people. Brene Brown is one of my favorite writers. She has this thing that said, it's hard to hate close up. When we get to know people, we get to find out that they're much like us. And so what we do through our practice interviews or through our lawn care or through our playing with our kids or through reading with kids, we get to see that there's great beauty in them and we're all very similar in that process. So we always need more volunteers. We also need more people to be part of it. I can honestly say that I'm very fortunate to say this. I work for in kind. So when someone gives me $1, nothing comes in my pocket. I don't take any money for what we're trying to do. I'm able to say that honestly because I've been successful in business. My wife and I believe in that. In doing so, we're spending about $800 per kid in tutoring. So when you think through it, it's one way that doesn't seem like a lot. Here's a stat for you: a dropout cost us in taxpayer dollars $292,000 over their lifetime. So what I tell my business friends is that you rather invest $800 in this kid for tutoring and keep them to graduate school, or pay $292,000 when they drop out. It's a pretty easy equation to figure out. So part of it gets into is what I can commit to the audience is if you give money, the money will go to the program. It won't go to Larry. It won't go to overhead. I'm very much a zealot of trying to keep overhead down. We bought a building and we raised $9 million in capital campaigns so we can have a building paid for. And you can come visit us at our community center at 1854 Shackelford. And you can see that we have a great environment here that kids can come and prosper. In fact, we're putting a soccer field in. We not only want to educate the mind, but we want the mind to have fun. Our kids need to be kids. You can't be a kid if you worry about things too much. We have a very strong music program. We believe that if we nourish the body, soul, and mind, that a better character will come out of that. But poverty robs us from that. So rather than let the kid experience the poverty of the home, what if we take on the opportunity of our resources and share them with them? Tutoring, music, soccer, sports, all of those things are very important to that process. And then we create pathways. And by the time you're 13 or 14, we begin to talk about, hey, what do you want to do? And yeah, there's great pathways through college. I want to be a lawyer. I need to go through college. But what if I really want to be a computer operator? What if I really want to do gaming or programming? What if I want to be an electrical engineer or a plumber? There's a lot of great pathways that can create a great earned living that I think is we should celebrate people that have those gifts. I don't have those, but I need a plumber. I need an electrician. So what we're trying to do with our kids is show them there's pathways based on certification that can create success.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's really more than just educational, right? It's a more holistic approach of like just growing up, and how to do it properly, successfully, and put yourself in the best position just to win going into the future. So that's amazing. How many volunteers do you guys currently have that work with you guys?
Oh, we have over 200.
Over 200. Wow.
Yeah. And it really is one of those things that, we're with our kids 180 days a year. So we're running an academy program 180 days. And we run the parent programs, the workforce training, financial literacy, English, soft skills to learn how to do interview and resume writing. We do those 140 days. So really, as a small nonprofit, we lean on our volunteers to help us do a lot of those things. There's so many really talented people in our marketplace that are looking for a place to plug in. Yes, start your own nonprofit if you want to, but man, come work with us and I'll let you own part of what we're trying to do. It's a great environment to be in. I tell people it's a safe environment to be in because it's a great, very strong structure. And I also will tell you that what I've learned over time is that they're beautiful people. And those people have totally different backgrounds than we have, but they want the same thing. They want what's best for their kids. They want a better life for themselves. That's no different than most of our work when we were in their positions.
Right, right. And like you said, people need to go out there with a stretching hand and really help them make the world a better place, which is obviously what you guys are doing. And it's so cool just hearing your story. I know I've seen it before, I've read about it before, but now hearing it, it's just wow. Like you can really see how God's hand is kind of over top of what you guys are doing, and just watching it become so successful is just so impressive to see because it's not easy, to make a nonprofit this successful, which is awesome. With that being said, what are your goals for the future for this nonprofit? What does that look like? How big are you trying to grow, and what's that expansion mindset look like?
Well, one thing is I want to raise minority leaders who can lead in our community. You know, I very fortunate during the pandemic I was in charge of the diversity team, but I said by itself that's a problem. You're asking a white guy to lead a diversity team. The diversity team should be led by someone who's diverse. Now, to our credit, they came back and said we asked all the minorities and they said to get you. So I have spent a lot of time in that world. And I'm very thankful that I'm accepted by them. But we need to grow that up. You know, we need to go in rooms. I'm in rooms all the time in leadership, and I don't see enough minorities there. So one of my objectives here is to raise up tomorrow's leaders from within, and so that they can also become the models for many other kids in that process. That's part of what we want to do at Corners is we want to be big enough that our folks are coming back and serving themselves, so it becomes theirs, not ours, not something Larry created, but how they can go about doing it. And unfortunately, poverty is growing. I mean, all around us, poverty is worse. The the pandemic or the apartment increase. I mean, costs went up, and so our families are more desperate than ever, which really ties back to skills. So the only way to really beat that gap is to get a better skill that people pay you more money. So my objective would be to continue to grow our industries, continue to fund those industries into creating funding for growing our education and continuing to dream with our kids so that they will no longer believe that there's no trajectory for them. Because I grew up in poverty, but my mom would say, you can be anything you want to be. We need to be saying that to our kids all the time. And that's why I love entrepreneurship. It
Yeah.
really is the opportunities in front of us. We just got to have someone spur us or challenge us or walk alongside of us to help us accomplish that.
No doubt. Like you mentioned, I think mindset is one of the biggest things, one of the most important things you can really teach a kid growing up. And, you had your mom tell you that, but you can also tell some young person you can do anything you want to do and be anything you want to be. That sticks with them, and that can make all the difference down the road, which is extremely, extremely positive. Before we run out of time, I just got a couple more questions to ask you. So one, obviously, you knew from the get-go what you set out to do, what you wanted to do, and obviously you've done that, and it's been amazing. But looking back on everything you've done so far, I mean, what has been the biggest revelation or biggest shocker that you kind of just learned just going along this journey so far that you didn't expect?
Well, I say this, and it's not meant to be political, but most people turn it into it. I did not understand immigration. I would say that my knowledge of immigration was kind of what most of us is. It was arm's length or based on TV. And having lived with many people that are new to America and come in from all different countries, I have a better appreciation for what their life was in those countries. I have a better appreciation for our immigration system, which I think I would say truly needs reform. I'm not trying to win popularity contests. We need those workers. Those workers are looking for a better future. Most of us came from another country. Somewhere along the way, that's how we got here. And
Yeah.
so what I would say is I have learned so much more about immigration, and I don't say it again as anything more than we need to think about how we can actually win together, because I think there's so many good people, despite what sometimes is said, there's so many good people doing great work, and they need to be valued and feel the value of that process, which is a biblical statement. Love the alien, but it's also important to love your neighbor. It's also important that we love each other. I think that's a critical thing in that process. So that's probably the thing that I would say I've most learned that I didn't know. I'd also say that poverty is very consuming. I mean, United Way put out a stat that said only 4% of children in poverty in Atlanta will break out of poverty.
Wow.
4%. So if you're in poverty and you're born into poverty and your parents are struggling, what that says is almost you have no hope of getting out. That's why Corners gets up every day and works hard, because we believe we're changing lives day by day. And we cannot let the stat of 4% live, because that's dooming our kids to a life of poverty, which most of us have not experienced. We have not experienced making the choice between paying the light bill or getting groceries. And so we have the resources, we have the responsibility, and together we can break out those kids out of poverty, which creates a better future for them and for our community.
Yeah, that is such a sad and crazy statistic. 4%. I mean, man, like if you want to make the world a better place, I mean, that's definitely the place to start. And
Yeah.
help change that statistic, which is cool to see you guys doing. Um, so one of my last questions for you is, obviously a lot of people listen to this, and you've had a lot of success, whether it's with a nonprofit, success with a company. what would be your number one lesson or number one tip to just to help other people just reach success, you know?
Mhm. Well, I'm a great follower of Robert Greene's servant leadership, and the first aspect of servant leadership is listening. I think we are very much in the tell mode. I think we need to be much more in the listening mode because it's what we've been doing well at Corners and what I did well at consulting. It's when you listen, you honor people. And when you honor people and they share, you create a better end product. So my view is sometimes we're in a rush to create the solution. One of the principles we talk about here a great deal is fall in love with the problem. The solutions all change, but the problem is what we need to fall in love with because that recognizes and honors the beauty of the person. That's probably the number one lesson I try to tell people. And it's hard for younger people. And it's hard for sometimes people that walk in, they want to change the world in a few moments and go back home. That's not how life changes. Life changes, we say, walk out life together. So we're in this with them. I not only live every day at Corners Outreach, I go to predominantly a Latino church and a church that we created so that everyone could belong. It's a non-denominational church so that the true belonging can occur, and we welcome everyone into that particular process. So I would say that one of the critical things is just listen. Listen and honor people and listen to their story over and over again because it's in their story that you'll create unity, and in that unity, you'll create better solutions.
Yeah, that's such great advice right there. Love that. And so before we hop off, is there anything else that you would like to say? And if people want to reach out to you or Corners Outreach, how can they go about and find you guys?
Yeah, you can go on our website at cornersoutreach.org. My email is larry.campbell@cornersoutreach.org. And I would welcome to have anyone write suggestions. I'm looking for entrepreneurship in ourselves. What can we do better? How do we make that work? How do we partner better and figure those things out? And I would also challenge us all to actually, when we go home today or during this week, to spend a few minutes looking at people deeply. We are very busy, but in our business, sometimes we really are not seeing the person. And that's, again, back to Brene Brown, is looking them up close. That's why I love the lawn care business. I can't tell you the number of my clients that will call me and say, I was a little apprehensive because the people came out here to serve my yard. They don't speak much English. And then they wind up giving them coffee and Christmas gifts and loving them because back to the same thing. We use the saying, we're better together. And so I think we've created a wonderful thing in America, a wonderful thing in God's kingdom that we're better together. I try to live that out, and I'm hoping anyone on this call who wants to experience that life, we would love to have you be part of our team.
Such a great mission, such a great purpose. I really do appreciate that. I know my listeners will definitely really enjoy this podcast and hear everything you guys are doing. It's absolutely incredible. So with that being said, Larry Campbell, thank you so much for joining me today.